Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar, and I'm a guest today. Leonard Scheiner is joining me, which I'm really excited to have a conversation with you a little bit about what you do now, where you've been, and where you're going, and just the expertise that you have to share. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Zach. I'm excited to dive in.
Absolutely. And I also like to just have you kind of tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now as an entrepreneur and kind of how you got into that space, as opposed to me giving that long oration of your biography and what it is in your background that makes you you. Let's just talk that through as we go in this conversation.
Well, that's a great setup. So thanks for that. Today, I help everyone from the small boutique service provider, think doctor, lawyer, office, all the way through Fortune 500 companies. So my main focus with that is to help them gain more credibility, more authority through marketing and PR efforts. So let's rewind that back to where I started. I grew up in a really small town. I like to joke that there was two horses in my town and that was it, right? It gives you kind of the size of how small it was. And I knew that I wanted to go and explore more and do bigger things. And so moved from that small town, did university in Southern California, and then hung around the LA area for a bit. And when I got started in marketing and specifically law firm marketing, I went in as an intern. I was in university and then I just rode that ladder up through the different positions and I learned a whole lot. And I took that and took it to a creative agency in Hollywood. I thought if I can brand professionals, then I can brand celebrities as well, and did that for a bit. So I was on the agency side. And that was fun. It was entertaining. It was in entertainment. But it was really not like I really love the aspect of taking someone's expertise and getting that out into the market, right? Really positioning someone as the expert. And with celebrities, they're not an expert, right? Their drama is their expertise. And so I didn't really find a lot of personal resonance with that work. So went back to law before I then started my own agency, which today is Geek Haus. And it was actually a pivot, right? It was a pivot from being in the 9 to 5 in a corporate, law firm type role into being a founder, into being an entrepreneur. And I had always done something on the side because I just can't sit still. Who's like that, right? Don't let me feel crazy here. But it wasn't until I had really achieved like the penultimate of what I wanted to achieve. I wanted a window office in LA looking over Wilshire Boulevard. I wanted the reserved parking spot. I wanted all of these things. And at one point I had that. I had the window office on Wilshire and I was looking at the Hollywood sign and then I was looking at the Beverly Hills and I was like, I don't feel like I'm not inspired every day. Like I'm not like lit up, right? Like I love what I'm doing. This is great work. It's fun, but like I'm not truly inspired by a mission. And so it quickly gave myself that situation quickly gave itself up to a pivot. And so I took that pivot as an opportunity not to go find another job, but instead to focus on building my expertise. So what I had done for everyone else, I then did for myself so that I could create my brand, my online presence, and ultimately have a marketing agency, have a PR agency that takes a client through a process and gets them great results. So that was my nutshell of a journey going from, where we all start to where I am today.
Well, let's just hit a little bit on that. When you mention side hustles and things that you always were doing on the side, I think that is a very common experience for people that have that entrepreneurial spirit and just can't sit still and always looking for, well, it's something I can do on the side. I have some time, might as well. What kind of things were you doing on the side out of curiosity here?
I was doing lots of things, anything that I could get my hands on, that wasn't illegal or any of that. No, 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 no. So when I was looking at side hustles, I was really looking at how could I build a business, right? Not like a hustle where sometimes it's just a hustle to generate extra money, right? And in my recent conversations now, like some people, they have a hustle of, I want to make $1,000 extra a month, right? And like that's like if they made an extra $1,000, they would be like, great, we can, go to all the nice restaurants, we can go on the vacation, we can do all the things that we want. But I had a different experience with that. My side hustle, I was always wanting to be a business so that I could take the gas pedal off of the corporate job and then put the full gas pedal onto whatever that side hustle was. So, it wasn't trading Pokemon cards or anything like that. When I was looking at doing a side hustle business, I tried financial services and kind of put my, tested the water of that realm, dipped my toe in, and I realized that it just wasn't for me. Nothing against the industry. It just wasn't something for me. And I was almost at this pivotal point when I was trying to do these side hustles was like, do I stay true to who I am, which is like your marketing, your growth kind of guy, or am I now the finance guy because I'm doing financial services, right? And that finance hat just didn't fit me. So that was a side hustle that I tried and didn't pursue. I also tried to be a marketing agency and market with clients, right? And so go find a client, try to market with them. The problem was though, that when Leonard tried to go out and get clients as Leonard, no one cared because Leonard was just Leonard and who's Leonard, right? Like what? So then when I shifted and I was doing the same thing, I was having the same conversations, but a few years later, when I established Geek Haus, now it was, here's an agency, I'm someone from an agency, and I'm trying to help you grow your business. That was a much smoother path. So I guess my takeaway for the audience on this is when you're trying side hustles, there's some people who want to bring in short-term money. And as a side hustle, that can happen, right? You can pick up a gig, you could, maybe waitress, right? That's a side hustle, pick up a few nights or shifts, but that's short-term money, right? After you leave that shift or after you do that one exchange, there's no more money to be established. I was very much so focused on how do I do something? How do I do a system? How do I create something, whether it's online or in person? How do I do that where I'm leveraging the time that I'm putting in once and then being able to leverage that into, either like an information product or have a system where I can get clients and do their marketing and have retainers. So I was more focused on building a system as a side hustle than, just the short-term cash. My vision was long-term.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to make is that doing a side hustle can be great for a short-term money-making activity, or you can focus on building something that will be established long-term that can create income that can increase over time and to become that main thing even for somebody. And I also think it's really key to note for anybody out there who's looking at doing something, you can dip your toe in the water of many different activities. They're not all going to be for you. So I think that, like you said, financial, no, that wasn't it. That wasn't the fit. So I kind of go back and reevaluate. Now, you mentioned also working with legal firms and helping kind of establish their brand. Talk a little bit more about that and how you evolved into that role and that capacity and kind of what that looked like as far as the growth that was experienced by the work that you were doing.
It's a great question. It's a very deep question. So when we're looking at firms and we're wanting to grow, there's marketing that handles that, right? That's the arm that turns the gear of bringing new clients in. But when we look at most firms, can you tell the difference between firm A and firm B? No, they're both construction firms, or they're both divorce firms, or they're both personal injury firms. And so when you're marketing it, it's really difficult to stand out of the crowd. It's really a noisy space. And so one of the ways that we look to stand out is by having a really strong brand. And so I created the growth method that is brand, market, grow. And that framework really identifies how important it is to establish your brand before you market so that you can grow. Now, people will say, well, what is a brand, right? Well, it's our colors, it's our logo. And then usually the room gets pretty quiet. But it's really so much more than that. It's when you're talking to a person and you can sense their personality, and they're either happy, or they're kind of a dull person, or they're a nervous person, or they're really excited and bubbly, or they're really like smart and analytical, or they're always trying to help everyone. We can judge someone's personality very quickly. But how do we do that for Johnson, Johnson & Johnson? How do we do that for Smith, Adams, and Kennedy, right? Like, how do we do that for a law firm? Because it's just a name, and by the type, like the font that they chose, I'm inferring how they might feel. I'm looking at the colors. I'm looking at, the things that people usually come up with. I'm looking at their logo and their colors and their website. But how do those get created, right? And those are marketing pieces. And their website is a marketing piece. So we really have to look at the brand side of things before we can go into market, because the brand is the look at, like, who are we? What do we want to be doing? What are our values? What do we want to communicate? It's the personality of the company. And for a law firm, that's usually, if there's 3 partners, it's largely the personality of the 3 partners. But we've got to blend those together in a way where it makes sense, and then be able to have enough of a brand platform to shoot our marketing from, right? So, like, you can't shoot a cannon from a canoe, but if you have a nice warship, you can shoot all the cannons you want. So the brand is our ship. The brand tells us, what do we look like? What do we paint? How are we painted? Do we have 2 decks, 3 decks? What are our values? What are we here for? And from that, you can shoot marketing messages when you've got a really strong brand. So to your question of how do we expand brands within law firms, we're looking at who they are specifically, and then how they can help people. Who are you? What are they doing uniquely that helps people, right? So if you're a personal injury firm, what does that look like? Well, there's 1,000 other personal injury firms. Maybe yours is that there's an app, and people can get case status updates just looking at the app, right? And it says this is happening, and then, in 28 days, we're going to have this happen. And then in 14 days, we have this happen. And then now I've just cut down the communication on my team. So yay, for us as a business aspect and a business KPI, we've alleviated some of that stress on our client management team. But we've also done a huge service to our client, because now they don't feel like they have to ask something and wait for it to come back. Now they can just log on and see all their details. So, I'm shooting from the hip, but that's one really good example of how you can differentiate yourself as a brand when we're not even talking about marketing. Notice that's not a marketing activity. It's just something that is there for the brand, for the firm.
Yeah, I like that establishing that foundation, that what type of ship you're shooting from, essentially. Like you said, I think that is a good analogy to look at it from that point of view. And so with what you are doing and what you did with law firms, it can be applied to other organizations, other types of services. And it sounds like you are taking that model and moving into other areas as well. But so say I'm a physician or an accountant, or some type of other organization that's looking for this type of service, and I just not sure. Maybe I know I've found a selection of different people doing this type of work. How do you quantify the value added, or have you been able to quantify the value added? And can you give us an example of that?
Yeah. When we're looking at branding versus marketing, and marketing, we always want the quick and easy ROI, right? I spent $10 and I made 20 back. Okay, I doubled my money. On the branding side, Zach, I'll often get the question of how do we measure that, right? And if we've got a before and after picture, say there's a firm that's been around for a while, we can say, okay, so you ran 5 campaigns last year. And those 5 campaigns, let's just say you got a 3x ROI, right? You got a 3 times return on investment. Okay, great. Now we did a branding activity or a rebranding activity, and now we're going to run another 5 campaigns. Now look at the performance of those campaigns. Now we could say that, the messaging could have been different, right? The campaigns themselves could have been better. There's a lot of different factors that could go into success, right? But what we want to do is read the tea leaves. It's really difficult to look at a brand and say, well, that rebrand, we're going to spend X amount on it and it's going to generate us an X return, right? Like, it's just not a product that does that, right? Like, if you were to buy a blanket because you were cold at night, what's your return on that blanket? Not being cold, right? Like, there's not a quantifiable degree, or there's not a medium that we can quantify, right? I was like 3 times more happy, right? So I don't know. But what we could do is quantify the results, right? So say I slept for 30 days and my sleep was at a really low quality because I was cold. And then I put the blanket on, and then I do another 30 days of sleep. And by golly, my Aura ring tells me that my sleep is at 99 and it's almost near perfect. Because what change did I make? I put the blanket on my bed, right? So now I'm sleeping at a better temperature. So that's what I mean by we've got to read the tea leaves and use our best judgment. And this is why some people, some companies will spend a lot of money on branding before they actually get to marketing. And what I like to do is I like to do an open-ended brand. So what that means is that we start your brand, we get the foundation there, and then over like the next year, we're kind of tweaking who your brand is, because we have to see how that bounces back between you and the community and the audience and potential clients. So it's not a straight quantifiable equation when we're looking at the ROI on brand. It's more so from a marketing or sales perspective, what do we want to put in to get, leveraged efforts out of our marketing? Better brand, better marketing.
I like that point because there are a lot of people that don't know what their brand really truly is. Like you said at the beginning there, it's, well, I have these 2 colors and this is my font and maybe
Yeah.
a logo. And so to be able to then expand that and to not just solidify it all at one time, but to have some level of flexibility over a period of time. It also makes me think of when you looked at the side hustle, not really as a short term thing, but more of a longer term, like I need to create something out of this that I can then move into over time. That seems the same concept here with branding and the way that your perspective, it's not just the short term, we're going to do this quick fix and then it's going to be all great. You may need to make some changes and adjustments over time to be able to see that improvement and solidification, and also that longer term comparison, especially for a company that's been around for a while. You ran these marketing campaigns this last year. Well, we're doing this rebranding, tweaking, now running these campaigns. We're still on board and helping and involved. It's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, there's a level of guidance that needs to be communicated during this process, because for most people, they are not branding on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
So like, we don't even know what we don't know. And part of it is also that when we try to go straight to marketing, we will often blame marketing for not working. But it's not the marketing that's not working. It's because you didn't do your homework before, which is the branding, to make sure that the marketing that you're doing has the best chance of being successful. And I say that with knowing that people are in this confused state, right? I say that full well knowing that 10 years ago, branding or personal branding, which relates to your professional brand, like that wasn't even in the vocabulary of regular people, right? You said personal branding, and it was like, well, what is that? Like, well, my brand, like we kind of got it in concept, but now you look and there's so many books and so much curriculum about how you put a brand together. So yeah,
Yeah.
guidance is definitely needed.
Yeah, the choices too with regards to options when you talked about attorney and law firms and which one you want to work with, they're more expansive as well with the internet. So being able to just hop on and do a quick search for all of the different companies. I mean, maybe the town that you were from with the two horses, there weren't very many options, but if you're even still, you're in a small town, you now can reach out beyond the small location and multi-states to people that are also licensed in that state to be able to practice. So it's definitely helpful to really dial in on that front end, establish that foundation. So what are some of the ways that you come alongside someone and help them to, like, say, just increase their media exposure or get their themselves out there as an organization?
We look at helping someone. Are you talking about on their personal side, or are you talking about in their business side of things?
On the business side, let's talk about the business side, but then if there is something that you can relate to as far as this personal side, reference that as well, please.
Okay, give me the question one more time. I want to make sure I
Um,
answer it correctly.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. What do you do to come alongside others to, increase media exposure for them, for their business? Are there certain things that you guide and direct them on to do so?
So, on the professional side, helping someone with their media is really about connecting them to opportunities where they can be in front of their most ideal client or
Mhm.
patient or customer, depending on what industry you're in and you call it that. So, we're looking at okay, you're a dermatologist. I want to have you in dermatology related articles. We want you to be in skin related publications. We want you in not just in publications that are specific to uh, your industry, but also publications that are local, right? So many
Mhm.
service providers, like a lawyer or a doctor, they're serving people either within their city or within their state, or there's some type of geo relationship. And so we also want to be in publications that are locally based because the word of mouth as well as the local credibility is a great checkbox to check when we're looking at building that authority. And then we want to also look at national. So, we might be in an industry publication and a local newspaper, but then we want national. And that could either be, in print or on TV. But we're looking for how do we take anyone and everyone where our clients might be and penetrate into that media market. So it might be in text or video, it might be in local or national, but we're crafting that strategy based on who you, the listener, who you are, because everyone takes a different path. We've had clients come in before where they had been previous counsel for Amazon, right?
Mhm.
That client is going to take a different path than another client that we had who was a real estate agent, and she got her license just that year. And now we're pitching her for press 2 weeks after her website was launched,
Mhm.
right? Like those are very different profiles of someone who could come in. And so when we're looking at each of those, we're going to chart our strategy very differently. So um,
Okay.
those are some of the ways that we do it. So we'll do a done for you service where you're hiring us as your PR firm. There's also I like to work with clients in a really one-on-one way
Mhm.
where not only are we just worried about getting you results and getting you published, but I want to smooth your path to get there. So,
Yeah.
how do you look? How do you sound? And for sometimes, for some people, they've not heard the feedback that we give them in the container, right? Because we're setting a really neutral, a really constructive space. And you might like have this tick that you do that you don't even know and no one's told you because you're an executive,
Mm.
but that's really going to make you stand out, not in the good way. So we want to address that, right? Or at least work to decrease that. So part of it is the appearance of how someone shows up. We call that media training. So we're kind of full breadth in taking someone wherever they are and then charting their strategy to getting them published.
Yeah, that's great. And so give me a little bit more in regards to the how you operate from as Geek House, because we were talking about branding, we're talking about PR, reference marketing. So when someone comes to you, what are the kind of services that you really do provide now as you're working with companies?
We are a full service agency.
Okay.
So we work off of the model brand market grow, and that's something that I created just around the time that I was founding Geek House, because I had seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs who were in the service space, and they were trying to market and trying to sell their services and do all these things before they crawled. They were trying to run before they crawled. Like they didn't have a brand. And it was just like, I'm Joe with Joe's Marketing and I can help you get on page one of Google. Like, okay, we've all heard that. We all know a Joe. Like, it's just noise. And so after hearing this so many times, and whether it was, a consultant or an attorney or a nutritionist or a doctor or a realtor, any of that, it's kind of the same pattern, is that we want to bring in clients before we do the foundational work. And so that's what led to me creating Brand Market Grow. And so that method is really how we organize our clients to come in, right? So
Mm.
we will look at brand, and we start with, again, depending on where you are, if you don't have a name, you've just graduated, or you're at a law firm and you want to hop and do your own thing. So we're looking at brand name, we're looking at your colors and your logo and your values, and how we're setting that up. What's your unique selling proposition? What's your one-liner of who you help do what? We're going pretty deep within that branding space. Within that column, I like to do some press. I like to get the press started, because if we know who you are, who you help, what your values are, and we've got, some online presence for you, we can start pitching out and getting results. We're pretty good in that department. And what that does is, within our branding pillar, that press lets us build trust and credibility, right? So if someone's been featured on ABC, CBS, and Forbes, that's a lot of credibility. That's a lot of trust that we can put onto a website. We can put it into marketing material. And the benefit of why I like to do that within some of it within brand is because you are working on legacy type activities, right? I was featured on Forbes. Can I say I was featured on Forbes next month? Yes. How about next year? Yes. What about next decade? Yes. What about in 50 years? Can I say I was featured on Forbes? Heck yes, I can. So we're really working on the foundational, like I can't stress that enough. These are foundational blocks that just build your ship so that you can do more marketing activities from there. So within brand, we're doing that. Marketing is either email marketing, or it's organic marketing. If someone wants to build their audience, build their client base, build their list, we're also looking at PPC, so Google and Facebook ads. And within marketing, that's where we're seeing them go from concept to clients, right? So we have the concept of a business with the branding. Within marketing, we're getting clients. We're moving people into the business that are profitable. And then grow, which is our last pillar, is where we're looking at, okay, what happened in marketing that we can tweak and optimize and double down on. So if we did this campaign, it was great. Okay, I think it would have really been successful with 3 other emails here and a lunch and learn here, or whatever it might be, right? Apply this to yourself as you're listening. But whatever happened in our marketing, we want to optimize, tweak, and double down. And then that's our growth part. And our partners, our clients who stay with us through that process and end up in growth, they're the ones that we're working most intimately with, because we've branded them, we've marketed them, and now we're fully entrenched. We know the history, so it doesn't take us much advice to go in there and really scale them, because we look at what can they do, what's the smallest things that they can do, what's the lowest hanging fruit to be able to get the biggest results.
I love it. I think that's perfect for someone, especially someone that has expertise, has a desire, motivation to take on an entrepreneurial opportunity, but really doesn't have the needed plan to lay the foundation and to grow from there. So I think that you have established that support, that guidance to come alongside of companies, organizations, individuals new to been in the business for a while to create that opportunity. So if someone does want to find out more about the work that you're doing and to learn more about Geek House, what is the way for them to find out more?
You are welcome to visit us. Our website is gogeekhouse.com. So go, G-O, geek, G-E-E-K, and then house we spell a little bit different. We spell it H-A-U-S. So gogeekhouse.com. Or if they would like to, I've got a free training that I run pretty regularly. So whenever you're listening to this, there's probably one coming up. You can go to podcastguestintensive.com. You might need the 3 W's before, but podcastguestintensive.com. And you can register for no cost and attend the intensive. What that is, it's a workshop. And I teach how you take your knowledge and turn that into podcast guest appearances. I show you how you can have a VA run this for you in the amount of time it takes you to have about 2 lattes a day, and how you can put a system behind getting yourself on podcasts as a guest and being interviewed. What that does is it lets you create content. So checkbox done, right? Now you can repurpose your content. It lets you gain authority, checkbox done. And really you're positioning yourself to be ahead of your peers. It's really small, it's really easy, it's something that should really run in the background. I don't touch my process, my VA does it, and I am consistently booking podcast guest interviews every single week. So go ahead and head over to podcastguestintensive.com and hop in. I'd love to see you there.
Excellent. I love it. And I'll make sure that gets in our show notes for those that are listening to this podcast or watching, so that you can get access to that free offer, as well as Go Geek House as well. So, and remember, H-A-U-S, the German spelling of house. So, Leonard, I want to ask one more question that I like to ask all my guests. If you were to be given $1 million today, no strings attached, how would you invest that in your business or another endeavor?
That is a wonderful question. So I would take that $1 million and I would speak to the best financial advisor that I knew. And I would take that capital, and I would likely not even touch that principal and put it into something that would generate money over time. See, I guess, Zach, this is just in my mind. It's the long-term view, right? Is like, if we can take something and set it and forget it with the right guidance, with the right coaching, with the right advice, then to me, that makes all the sense. It would make complete sense to act like that $1 million never existed today, and then in 20 years, be able to pull out 20 million or something like that.
Right. Growth over time. I think that's a very strong perspective. And I feel like the great Warren Buffett would also come alongside of that idea and say that that's a good values-based approach to use of that money. There are a lot of people who'd get that and they would blow it right away, because there's a lot of things we can do with that. But if you can allow that yourself patience over time, that can accumulate in such a large amount that you can do so much more than you would be able to do today. So love that answer. Well, thank you again for being a guest today. But we'll be able to get this up for others to listen to and to learn from, and definitely encourage people to take advantage of the offerings that Leonard spoke about today.
It's been great being